With us now is Republican Senator Mike Rounds of South Dakota. He serves on both the Senate's Armed Services and Intelligence Committees. Senator, welcome. I want you to listen to Congressman Adam Smith. He's the top Democrat on the House Armed Services Committee.
We are doing it because of ignorant, bigoted reasons against the trans community. I think that is problematic, and I hope we will rethink it and remove that from this bill because it taints an otherwise excellent piece of legislation.
So Smith is notable because he's a staunchly pro-Pentagon, moderate Democrat who ultimately voted against this package. You've been deeply involved in crafting the legislation since long before these hot-button issues were included by House leadership. Is there any chance that these provisions could derail final passage in the Senate?
Well, good morning. I don't believe that it will. What the House did was to discuss and then decide that puberty blocker medicines simply weren't appropriate in the bill, and they basically are saying DOD should not be doing puberty blocking for young kids. And I think the vast majority of Americans would probably agree with that. So there'll be a discussion on it, but nonetheless, I think the most critical part is that the Department of Defense needs to have this NDAA in place. It's what authorizes the pay increases for our young men and women. In fact, we've got about a 14.5% increase for our junior officers and so forth and folks that are enlisted. But at the same time, we're talking about a 4.5% increase across the board for everybody else. So that was a really important part of this. It also sets out the guidelines for the Department of Defense to actually start considering the possibility that if we were to ever have a major conflict, the major conflict should be planned for multiple fronts, not just one. We also did a number of other items in here with regard to maintaining the number of aircraft that the Air Force has to be able to maintain, specifically with the defense of Israel in mind, but also the top end, the F-22s and so forth, that they would be maintained until such time as there's a replacement. So, yeah, there are certain items that will draw attention, but the vast majority of this bill is very, very good, and I don't think that having the Department of Defense being restricted from providing puberty blockers to kids is going to stop it from passing.
Okay, one of the criticisms that I've heard in a quiet voice and behind closed doors from some Republicans is that things like these restrictions on puberty blockers, this is all stuff that the Trump administration could have done on its own a month from now. Was this necessary? Was this posturing?
You have to remember that with the NDAA, both the House and the Senate have a say in it. The NDAA that was out of committee, ready to go to the floor, did not have it in the Senate side, but in the House side it did. And you have to bring them together. And in this compromise, if we could have brought it to the floor of the Senate, we could have had an actual conference committee report, which meant that there would have been a debate about it. Unfortunately, the leadership in the Senate this year, Senator Schumer and his team decided that the NDAA was not going to get a vote on the floor of the Senate. So the House and the Senate behind closed doors have been working their way through this. The House had the first opportunity to pass a bill, and now it comes to the Senate. I think while there may be some debate on it, it's going to pass fairly quickly would be my expectation, probably by Wednesday or hopefully Thursday at the very latest.
You are one who would know. The race is on in Syria to find missing Americans, secure chemical weapons, prevent a power vacuum. What do you want to see there? What's your top priority as the United States thinks about next steps for Syria?
Well, we've got about 50 to 60,000 former ISIS members and their families that are basically in a particular camp that the SDF on the western or on the eastern side of Syria right now have been controlling. We work with them. We've got about 900 of our servicemen and women that are there. They work with the SDF in that region, and we don't want those ISIS members out of their containment areas. At the same time, our NATO ally Greece is really concerned about their southern border there with Syria, and they want an area there, kind of a no man's land or a neutral area between them and what they consider to be a terrorist organization with the PKK, which is an offshoot of a group of Kurds. And the Kurds have been part of the SDF with us, so we've kind of got this thing where we're supporting and have been supported by Kurds in taking out ISIS. our NATO ally. Turkey is very concerned about incursions into Turkey by folks that would like to have a separate Kurdistan area or a Kurdish area there, separate from Kurdistan. And so in the middle of this whole thing, you've got Israel on the far west, who has taken the opportunity to take out and knock off some weapons facilities and so forth near their areas. All of this happening at a time in which there is a void of control over the rest of Syria. So it's going to take some time to work our way through this, but I really think we need to be working with both Israel and with Turkey in trying to establish some boundaries for all of them, so that there is not a fight between the folks that we're supporting, the SDF, and at the same time recognizing Turkey's real concern about defending their southern border and never leaving the side of Israel. They have done a great job over there of taking out a number of the facilities there on the far western part of Syria. So there's a void in the middle. We're going to have to work our way through it. In the meantime, Jordan, who has been holding over 1.3 million refugees, perhaps can now see some relief if some of those refugees start moving back into Syria if the fighting were to stop.
Okay, the Syria question has some political ramifications here at home. On Monday, you had the chance to meet with Tulsi Gabbard, the president-elect's nominee to be the nation's chief spy master. Some Democrats, like Senator Tammy Duckworth, have gone so far as to say that Gabbard is, quote, compromised by Russia. But the concerns about her are bipartisan to some degree. In 2017, she rejected American intelligence and blamed opposition forces for chemical weapons attacks on civilians directed by Bashar al-Assad. She accused then-President Trump of seeking illegal regime change in Syria. Here's what the Wall Street Journal editorial board had to say. They decried her dogmatism on Syria, Israel, and Iran, saying supporters of Mr. Trump's foreign policy will think twice about confirming her. Did she allay any of those concerns in your conversation with her?
I think we had a very good opening meeting. She's very bright. I think there's a lot of information that she'll be able to avail herself to perhaps change some of her judgment decisions from past discussions. I don't have any objection at all to members of Congress going over and visiting with foreign leaders. And so that part doesn't bother me. What does concern me is if the policy statements made by an individual differ from our U.S. policies, and if we're going to have that debate in public. And so in this particular case, what I shared with her was I really thought that she needed to be in a position in open hearings to be able to respond to any criticisms of her not having access to some of the classified reports that she'll need to have access to in advising the president. And as long as she's able to get that homework done, I think she's got a good chance of passing. But once again, this is going to be a case of providing good coaching for her and making sure that she's ready to be confronted by our Democrat colleagues with regard to her capabilities and her knowledge of the intel world. So I think she can get up to speed fairly quickly, and if she does, then I think the president will stick with her, and I think she'll have a good chance of passage.
Some of your fellow Republicans have complained about pressure tactics applied to Joni Ernst for even some modest questions about Pete Hegseth, but we've heard from Tom Tillis, we've heard from Lisa Murkowski, we've heard from Susan Collins and others that this is going to backfire, that it's high-handed, and that it won't work. Where are you on this question? Do you think the pressure is too much, or is this just the politics ain't beanbag and this is how it goes?
We're used to having folks threaten us on a regular basis with political retaliation, so there's nothing new with regard to that. But in the case of Joni Ernst, it was very inappropriate. It was, absolutely a terrible thing for outside forces to try to suggest that she was asking hard questions, Pete Hegseth, because she wanted the job. That just simply was not true. That was never a part of the discussion. And I think she was very inappropriately attacked. So some of the tactics can go way too far, and those can have some negative repercussions. But With regard to people, threatening to challenge us, that's a part we always face, and you simply take that as part of the job.
Okay, if you were from little old Watonka up there on the North Dakota border, you would know him already. But if you don't, there he is, Senator Mike Rounds. We thank you for joining us.